Hello, Daft here. Today we're going to be building TBS Discovery quadcopter with the NAES 32 board, multistar 935 kV motors, which I've got a prop on there. DJI crappy 30 amp Opto ESCs, but I'm using them because I have them from an old flame wheel that died. This Turnigy 5V BEC. There's the NAES. Hobbyking $5 camera. If I can find it, or not $5. This was like, what was it, $12 or something? I don't know. It seems to work. And there's a 12-volt regulator somewhere in there, as well as this little voltage monitor thingy that I will install because it looks pretty useful. It'll tell you your battery voltage, which is cool. So the first thing that we're going to do for this build is going to solder the ESCs. If this is your first time soldering, you might not want to have this as a first build. You might want to learn how to solder on something else, watch a soldering tutorial or something. But basically, what you have to do with solder is you can use a soldering iron, you can use a soldering gun. I've got a soldering gun that is old and beat up and really poorly taken care of, but hey, it works for larger solder joints. And you want to tin every single one of these solder pads, and for that you should use some nice lead core solder, which I've got. I've already gone ahead and I've tinned it. If you don't know what that means, you probably shouldn't have this as a first build, but tin the pads. I've tinned most of them, and then you heat up the you tin the wires on the ESC, which is done already. I've already done that on most of my ESCs since they've been installed on this quad previously. And then you heat them both up at the same time and you join them together. So I'm gonna solder these ESCs on and we'll be back. Now we have our 4 ESCs mostly decently soldered. It's not great, but hey, it'll do. It'll do. You're gonna want to solder on some connectors like this, which are like little servo connectors. If you've got servo extensions, then what you can do is you can cut them in half, and you can save the other part because you're gonna use it. But take the female end, I think, and it'll look something like this, except it'll have 3 wires, and it'll look like that. Ignore that this is a Y cable, it'll look like this. And what you do is you're going to cut the yellow cable off, which is the signal cable. So cut that signal cable off, pull it out, or what you can also do is you can push, I guess not on this one, but on most servo extensions you can push inside and you can pull the pin out itself, so you've got rid of the wire, and you're going to solder the positive to a positive terminal and the negative to a negative terminal. Now it doesn't really matter which goes to which, but what we are going to do is we're going to solder on 2 of them. I know for a fact we'll be using one, and you'll possibly be using another, so it's it'll be handy if you have an extra one. So solder 2 of these on to any port on your quad. I guess I'm gonna solder them both on back here because it's just most convenient. Now we've soldered these 2 little connectors, one there and one here, positive to positive, negative to negative, of course. And now I'm also going to solder in a 5V BEC, currently covered in crap. I'll knock that off really fast. And I'm also going to solder a 12V BEC, or not BEC, voltage regulator, but yeah. Alright, so there's the 5V BEC. And next, we've got to solder in a 12V regulator. This is a voltage regulator. It's got an an input on one end, it's got a ground in the middle, and it's got an output on the other end, and I have got it covered in liquid electrical tape. So I'm going to take that off and be right back. Well, what I've done is I've taken this servo extension, the male end, and I'm going to cut the signal, or pull the signal out of it actually. Pull the whole pin out. So then I've got positive and negative. And the positive is going to be soldered to the white, and the negative is going to be soldered to the ESC ground. So, let's solder really quickly. Now, for these two, we're going to solder directly to the board, like so. Solder it like that, and then I will lay the chip flat here, and I'll stick in place using some liquid electrical tape, which will also cover the connections, so it'll be really easy and convenient. So let's solder that. So now we've got all the soldering on the power distribution board done. There's still some more to do, but quickly what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some liquid electrical tape. I'm going to cover up all the solder joints. I'm also going to stick the 5 volt and 12 volt regulators in place, if I can do that without spilling this stuff everywhere. This stuff is messy to work with, by the way. Now that we've got the liquid electrical tape out, by the way, what you can do, if you want to, waterproof the entire quad, is you can cover your naze board, which I've done, in liquid electrical tape. Cover the top and the bottom, which I've not done yet, but only do this if you're using an Acro board, the Naze 32 Acro, because if you are using the full board, what you've got to do is you have to find the barometer, and you have to make sure you do not cover that, because that'd be bad. Also, the only pins you need are motor pins and the S-bus pins. If you want to solder pins there, you can. If you want to solder directly to the board, you can do that too. I've soldered directly to the board, but I just recently pulled too hard on the cable. I accidentally jolted it really hard. I thought it was another cable, and I jolted it out and snapped the solder joint. So I'm gonna go ahead and repair that. But yeah, S-bus. You want to solder the on the left on the top, or if you're holding it this way with the motor pins here, there will be 5 little tabs, and you want to solder signal, positive, and then negative to the 3 tabs the furthest to the left on the top. It'll look like that, except on the top. Or you could solder pins there and use a connector, but it's easier just to solder the wire. So go ahead and do that. I've got everything soldered, got everything covered in liquid electrical tape, and I've also taken some heat shrink and went over the ESCs to make things look a little bit neater. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to install the naze board, and then I'm going to do some wire management.